Hi guys, well, for our next video we're going to be taking a look at another Gigabyte laptop, and this time it is the A16 and more specifically the GA6H. Now if you saw our last laptop review where we were looking at the Aero A16, you'll notice that this A16 and the Aero A16 share a very similar hardware spec, and so the headline features are that we have a 10-core 16-thread processor courtesy of the Intel Core i7-13620H, 16 GB of DDR5, a 1TB PCI Express Gen4 SSD, and the RTX 5070. Now I've had a look at different regions for this laptop and you can see such a varied specification depending on where you are. In the US and UK, for example, this only comes with 32 GB of DDR5. But you guys can expect this for 1300 in the US, 1400 in the UK, and then 2200 in Australia. So on that last Aero X16 laptop we had the Ryzen 7 CPU. In this A16 we've obviously got the Intel Core i7 part, so it will be interesting to see how those two things compare. So I would suggest, as well as checking out this video today, I also suggest going over to the website for that review for a direct comparison. Before we begin, today's video is brought to you by the X870E Aorus Master. This well-rounded board is a top pick for those building an AMD based PC. It is designed for AMD Ryzen 9000 CPUs and of course comes with that X870E chipset. Some of these standout features are 3 PCI Express slots, one of those being Gen 5, and along with that we have 4 PCI Express driven M.2 slots. 3 of those are Gen 5 and the 4th is Gen 3. On the back panel we have a wide selection of ports for connectivity with the inclusion of 2 USB 4 ports. For more details on the X870E Aorus Master, please check out the link in the description. So here we have A16, and although this laptop is primarily intended for gamers, we have a pretty sleek and professional aesthetic. Gigabyte has implemented a tasteful design, and I think most would agree that it is appealing to the eye. Now as you might have guessed from the name, A16 is indeed a 16-inch laptop, and here are the physical dimensions. It is 358mm wide, 262mm deep, 22mm high, and then on the weight you're looking at around 2.2 kilos. And so this isn't quite the slimmest, but it is still thin and lightweight for those on the move. Now taking a look at the lid on A16, we have a flat panel, and the only discerning feature being that embossed Gigabyte logo, which is in the middle. So running down the left edge we have ventilation for the GPU heatsink and fan, DC-in for the power pack, a gigabit Ethernet port, HDMI 2.1, USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A, and a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type C, which can do DisplayPort 1.4 and Power Delivery 3.0. While over on the other side we have power indicator LEDs, 3.5mm audio combo ports, USB 2 Type A, and a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A. And so no USB 4 this time, but still a good selection of ports here. Now around the back, while we don't have any additional ports, we do have even more ventilation for the internal components, particularly for the CPU and the GPU. If we turn the laptop over, we have the rubber feet there, the strips to keep the laptop from slipping around and to create some clearance for the airflow. We have a pretty interesting design on the underside here, and even though we probably won't see much of it because it sits on the underneath, I really like what Gigabyte has done. There is plenty of ventilation for the internal components, and we have that spec label which is going to come in handy if you do need to get any technical support. And so now let's take off this back panel to have a look at that internal design and the hardware spec. So here is an overview of what you get inside. So the CPU inside our laptop is based on Intel Raptor Lake. It is the Intel Core i7-13620H, which is a 10-core 16-thread processor, which has a boost clock which can reach all the way up to 4.9 GHz. And then on the GPU side of things, we have the NVIDIA RTX 5070. Now unlike the desktop counterpart, which has 12 GB of memory, the mobile 5070 comes with just 8 GB. And we know from experience that the lower VRAM and the power limit on this laptop version does affect performance somewhat. So both the CPU and GPU have their own dedicated heatsink and fan, which sit on either side of the laptop. However, they do share the same heat pipes. When we do our testing later, we're going to show how good this cooling is. For the memory, we have 16 GB of crucial DDR5, which operates at 5600 MHz. But it is only single channel. As you can see, we've got a spare slot which is empty. And of course, having dual channel would have increased that performance potential. And that is something really that we would have liked to have seen rather than just a single stick. For storage, we have just one drive. It is a PCI Express driven M.2 using Gen 4. So this is a 1TB Gigabyte branded drive. It is actually the Aorus 5000E, which is capable of super fast transfer rates that we will show later on. And like the memory, we get a secondary slot for expansion. The battery inside this laptop provides 76 watt-hour. We tested it out and received around 2.5 hours when running a continuous loop of 3D Mark. And so that is good, but not quite the figure that Gigabyte hints at, which claims up to a day of battery life, up to 14 hours. And with that battery, as always, if you're going to be gaming, then make sure that that charger is connected so that NVIDIA power saving doesn't kick in. By having that charger connected, you are going to get the best performance from the GPU. For networking, we have 1GB Ethernet as well as Wi-Fi 6E from an Intel AX211 NGW, which gives us 2.4, 5 and 6 GHz options, and which also adds in support for Bluetooth 5.3. Now the screen is IPS and 16-inch, and like most models, Gigabyte gives some options for this display. There is a 2560 and a 1920 option. We have the 1920 by 1200 version. And as you guessed, the aspect ratio there is 16:10 as opposed to 16:9, and so we get a bit more at the top. The refresh is 165Hz, which is nice, but some of the competition around this price point is offering more. In terms of color, clarity and viewing angles, the screen is very good, and it benefits from a nice thin bezel, as you can see. And up at the top of our screen, we have a 1080p webcam. Turning to the keyboard, we have Gigabyte's golden curve keyboard. This comes with larger keycaps and has an optimized force curve to suit a combination of work and gaming. The layout is based on a QWERTY design, is somewhat condensed with the arrow keys sitting underneath the right shift. There is a hotkey on the keyboard for GMate, which will launch Gigabyte's own software. And then finally, we have the large touchpad, which blends into the palm rest area. This is dead center rather than being offset, which we tend to see on laptops. And both the keyboard and the touchpad, they perform really well. They are accurate and precise. Okay, so let's hit that power button and boot our laptop and see how quick we get into Windows from a cold boot. And once we're in Windows, you can see that we've got a small portion of apps which load on startup. One of those being Gigabyte GMate software, which allows you to control the functions of our laptop. There are some unique options in here, but many of them can be found in and around Windows itself. Okay, so that is the overview of A16. We've seen the physical design and the features, and now we're going to check out some of the performance. So first of all, we're going to see what the read and write performance is like for that Gen 4 SSD. After that, we're going to jump into some games to check out the performance of the 5070. Now the native resolution is 1920 by 1200, but for the sake of outputting to the correct ratio, we're going to opt for 1080p, and then we'll max out on the detail preset for each title. You'll be able to see the live temps on screen, but we'll also show the peak temps at the end of our test run. And we're going to be using the very latest drivers from NVIDIA, which are 58157. Okay, well that completes our look at the A16, a laptop which comes with a pretty decent hardware configuration. The full system spec is in the description, but we have the 10-core Intel Core i7, the 16GB of DDR5 running at 5600, RTX 5070, and that 1TB Gen 4 SSD. And all of that basically translate to this being a good mid-range unit that is able to deliver frame rates north of 60 frames per second in most titles. It will obviously depend on what you are playing, which games you're running, but for the most part you're going to be able to max out 1080 and get more than acceptable performance. Now the design of A16 is housed in a good thin lightweight unit. We get a good selection of ports, though we do have a lack of USB 4. We get the 16-inch IPS display which comes with 165Hz. Again, would have liked to have seen this pushed a little bit further, higher in the refresh rate for this particular price point. Would have also liked to have seen dual channel DDR5 instead of just that single stick to really maximize on the performance. But what do you guys think of this laptop that we've had a look at today? Let me know in the comment section below. As always guys, if you're looking for more performance results and benchmarks outside of what we've had a look at today, be sure to check out the web review. Thanks very much for taking time out of your day to watch. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.